Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it and give this video a like.
Podcast below in the description. Subscribe to that as well.
Also, check out our friends at deck.com/ham, John.
Deck.com/ham. If you have a truck, if you're a working man, get on this right now. Deck.com/ham.
Makes organizing, accessing, protecting, securing, and everything you need so much easier.
Do it.
Last year of his deal, John's got $7 million coming to him. He was the Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago. Dan Graziano on Monday said there's some thought that he could get traded in March around free agency. That didn't happen. There's issues. Teams that are interested know he's not happy with the contract, so you got to give up something to get him, and then you got to give him something, and that makes teams reluctant to part with the kind of value the Patriots are certainly wanting. And I remember before he tore his quad last year, there was some talk that the Patriots were going to try and their intent was to trade him during the season before the deadline. Then he got hurt. They couldn't do it, so now they're hanging on to him. And, Jalen Ramsey's IG posting trying to recruit him. I think he's going to be 31. Would you be interested in him? Would you be interested in Stephon Gilmore in a trade?
I think it was a pretty big blow for the Patriots because if he was healthy, they might have been able to get a 1, right? Because he still had another year and a half under contract. Yeah, and then he got hurt and it screwed him. I have a philosophy, and I developed it within the last 24 hours. You never want to say never to anything in life, so you have to be open-minded. But you cannot go down the well multiple times of extending star players to their third contract, non-quarterback. And the Niners just did it with Trent Williams. And it's a bold move. Now, they didn't really have a choice, but they are getting an older player. This is his third contract. He was a highly drafted guy. He got a huge extension. They gave him the third. I would say in the history of the league, you usually, star non-quarterbacks have like an 8 or 9 year run. Cardinals with J.J. Watt, they gave him a lot less than Trent Williams. Like, that's a pretty risky proposition. I'm not in that business. And you can do it once. This would be the second time the Niners did it. And like you said, it would probably, like, they're just going to give a second. It was kind of the Julio Jones thing. Are you going to give a second and then give Julio Jones a contract? Now he hasn't demanded a contract, so Gilmore's even more. Like, Julio showed up last week, right, in practice with Tennessee. Gilmore wouldn't do that with the Patriots or another team. So I would say it would be a no-go for me.
Yeah, I think with him, you'd probably have to agree.
And he's coming off a major injury.
And he's coming off a quad tear. You'd probably have to agree to a contract with him, right, before you acquire him. You'd have to at least have an understanding of what you're going to pay him before you acquire him, because you're not going to give up whatever you have to give up for him if you think he's going to come hold out and you don't want to pay him. Like, as an example, Jamal Adams didn't show. Jamal Adams is holding out in Seattle. Well, look, this will be his first. He's coming off his rookie contract. He's got 1 year left on his deal. This is not a surprise to the Seahawks. I think when they traded for him, they had to have every intention that they're going to pay Jamal Adams. Now, what's that number going to be? We'll see. But this is not a surprise to anybody. This is what they knew was coming when they acquired the guy. And it's different, right? Because what is he, 25? Now, he got hurt last year, but he's 25, 26 years old. He's relatively young. This is a different spot. I think the only reason it even crosses my mind with Gilmore and the Niners is because I do think ultimately it's going to be a position where they need another guy at corner. But, this would be a lot, because I think they, like you said, they would expect a lot for him because he's still a really good player. Are they in the business of trading Stephon Gilmore for a third?
If the Niners could do that draft over, they would have taken Jamal Adams over Solomon Thomas.
Man.
They probably just would have taken Patrick Mahomes, but let's not go down that road.
Yeah, once you start redoing that draft.
What was the question you asked on Gilmore?
Well, are the Patriots going to trade him for a fourth-round pick? Third-round pick?
Well, if he's not going to show, they might. Yeah.
I'd be a little surprised.
But is the team going to trade a third-round pick for him if he's not going to show up?
What would he get right now if he were a free agent?
I mean, off the major injury, I think it would be a pretty complicated issue. He's injured.
So if you're not giving him a major contract off free agency, now maybe you would do it. Maybe you would
1 year, $20 million or something.
Guaranteed?
Well, I mean, just a one. Well, Clowney got 15. I mean, what's 18? I mean,
that feels high to me.
12 with incentives to get to 20. You'd get.
He played for like 12 last year. They moved some of his money up. That's why he's only making 7 this year. But yeah, to echo
He's a complicated situation that I would not be in the business of unless I get for an all-time. If I get could I get for $5 million? Again, I'm not trading for him unless I can trade for him a mid-round pick, and it doesn't make any sense for the Patriots. Just write it out.
Here's the thing:
what's
if
he
you're
gonna do?
him
Not
on a
show up?
third-year contract, are you signing a 1-year deal? In other words, if he were a free agent and you told me the Niners could get him 1 year, and I would anything over like 14 would feel. I'm talking free agent. I'm not talking about giving up compensation. That's a whole other conversation. What would you pay for him on a 1-year contract if you were the 49ers? Would you give him 18?
I would do something risky. Yeah, 14,
Okay,
15, 16.
but he's not going to. So you're not going to trade a fourth.
Can I work him? Can I work him out?
If he's a free agent, let's say he does a physical and whatever.
I would take a swing, but I think we agree that it could be a disaster, right?
It could, and so now you throw into that. Are they real? I see. I don't know. I would. This is why we talked about him around the draft, is because, before they drafted Mac Jones, could you trade Jimmy for him? And you're both kind of taking a risk. But
I've changed my tune to just the more I've thought about older players, and I would stay away from paying premiums. I have no problem getting him on a discount, but you got to pay a premium for his services. And he's old and he's hurt.
You got to pay a premium in contract or in trade asset?
I'm just talking about hypothetically if he was a free agent. Like I just would not be in the business of trading for older players when you don't have a lot of picks too. That's pretty risky business.
Well, that's where, to me, what they could end up with is a player-for-player trade. You're trading somebody kind of redundant or risky. Again, that's not the case right now with the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not redundant at this point in time.
Well, the Patriots don't need him anymore.
And the Patriots, yeah. But my point is, like, they've done those types of deals before, right?
I would do that. I would do a player-for-player trade, yes.
And then give him a 1-year contract. But I don't know if he's showing up for a 1-year contract.
But the Niners don't really have a player-for-player trade to give him that the Patriots would want.
No. Now I'm just talking about him and the Patriots. I don't think it fits for the Niners from that standpoint. I think it used to fit for the Niners. I don't think
One thing I think Gilmore's going to find out is teams aren't going to be lined up for him, that he might have to roll it back with the Patriots, play well, then maybe he could get like a 2-year, $30 million contract, $20 million guarantee. Do you agree with that? Like if he just rides this out with the Patriots, is good again, maybe he could get a big payday. Not from Belichick, because Belichick does not give third contracts.
No, John, Belichick's got J.C. Jackson, an undrafted free agent on the other side, who's actually pretty good. So
yeah,
he's not into it. He doesn't get enough credit for J.C. Jackson, I don't think, by the way.
Well, I think he would have got a lot of credit last year. Remember the last 2 years, the Patriots, it was their worst Tom Brady season 2 years ago, right? They got bounced in the first round. It was just kind of weird. And then last year, they weren't that good. To me, if they would have been Super Bowl level Patriots, I think a lot of people would be blowing J.C. Jackson publicly. I think he flies a little under the radar nationally because the Patriots have just slipped a little bit. If he had been the J.C. Jackson in like 2016, I think a lot people would be like, Malcolm Butler, Now, Malcolm did have the play.
Yeah.
But Malcolm Butler can't run. Malcolm Butler was a good player, right? But if you just went down the street and ran into NFL fans, you bring up Malcolm Butler. Every human knows who Malcolm Butler is. I mean, he's probably one of the most famous players of the last decade, non-quarterback.
Well, he's made one of the greatest plays in Super Bowl history.
Yeah, but he parlayed that into a big contract with the Titans.
Yeah,
can't run.
The other thing was the legend of it, right? That it was like this was the play they practiced 3 days before or something like that.
Yeah, and he took a wrong angle, and then they coached him up, and they knew the play was coming. Yeah, it was a sweet play.
It was a sweet play. John, let's tell the people about our friends at Decked.
Oh,
are you kidding me? Decked.com/ham. Decked.com/ham. Decked, if you own a truck, I've seen ever since Decked jumped on the pod. We talked to Decked a couple weeks ago. They're on the pod this week. I went on a walk yesterday. I walked by a bunch of construction zone, pickup trucks everywhere. And all I can see now is people who need Decked. The drawer system for organizing, accessing, protecting, and securing everything that you carry with you in your truck.
Guy, each of Deck's 2 full bed-length drawers can carry up to 200 pounds of whatever you got. The drawers roll out waist high, giving you easy access. Organize your tools, gear, whatever. Hey, you want a tailgate? You pull that bad boy out, throw some brewskis in there, some Trulies, some White Claws, some Coors Light seltzers, whatever you want. Tito's, throw it in the ice, boop, 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 And then you got a tailgate. The deck system keeps your gear secure. It's out of sight and out of mind. It lays down on the bed, so you can still put things over it, right? Up to 2,000 pounds, whatever you got, right? You want a couple offensive linemen, a couple Trent Williams, stand right on there, no big deal. The
How
deck
much do you think
system,
Trent Williams weighs?
Right, not that much, 320. The deck system is 100%. I love this. Made in the USA and backed by a 3-year no-hassle warranty with a second-to-none customer service team ready to answer all your questions.
4.89 stars and over 7,000 reviews. There's plenty of, like John mentioned, non-traditional ways. You can retrofit it with electronics. You fill the drawers with ice for your big tailgates. You can put your 4x4 with that 2,000-pound payload capacity. You can put your 4x4 on top of the drawers. Keeps your gear secure, out of sight, out of mind, and weatherproof as well. So 3-year warranty, but I think you mentioned this. Did you mention this today or the other day?
The other day. They've never turned anyone down.
It's a great company to work with. Fits every full-size truck and cargo van made since the mid-'90s and every mid-size truck since around 2005. Take the worry out of your mind when it comes to your truck. It's durable. It's a stress reliever. No other product like it. Go check it out. It's fun to look at. We did it. Decked.com/ham. That's decked.com/ham for your free shipping. Decked.com/ham.
Do it.
I don't know if you got this, but I got some of these in my DMs today. Go get Florio. Go get him. I don't know how Florio became like this lightning rod for takes, but
he's become, as someone who's not on Twitter as much as I used to. That's where I take Florio. I have noticed, though, specifically, he does some trolling things. Like he's plays to his little role of, he can be a little fake with some of the shit he does. He knows what he's doing, I guess, what I'm saying.
He said this during, I pulled these quotes from 49ers Web Zone, who compiled some of what Florio said, John.
God, I love aggregators.
I keep going back to the common denominator for dysfunction in Green Bay, the dysfunction in San Francisco, the dysfunction with the Rams where they dumped Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford, the dysfunction with the Seahawks. It all traces back to Tom Brady. The dysfunction, is he just listing NFC champions as dysfunctional? What is he talking about? He went on to say, or one of the other things he said that he listed as evidence that the Niners are dysfunctional was that they traded up to 3 before they knew who they wanted, and in his estimation, they could have got their guy at 12.
Well, I think a lot of the media feels like they have egg on their face with the Mac Jones thing. They put all their chips in the middle of the table for whoever was telling them that, and they were adamant. And it wasn't just they felt like people taking swings. People kept doubling, tripling, and quadrupling down. And then Mac Jones was not only not selected, he went 15th. So it's like a lot of people look dumb. Now, I don't think that's necessarily what he means here. I do believe when Kyle said that they were taking Trey Lance the entire time, I said from the beginning that I don't know if this is true, but when they made the trade, I believe that they had their list. They were going to – now, obviously, things can change over a month and a half or whatever. They made the trade, I do believe, to take Trey Lance. And I think it's been proven that when they did that, it had a domino effect on the Broncos, who then traded for Teddy Bridgewater, and the Carolina Panthers. Like, over that month, they got word, like, it's going to be Trey Lance. And they got Sam Darnold and Teddy Bridgewater. Because Trey Lance, I saw one of the things he was saying, again, I didn't read this, an aggregator had wrote this. One thing, Florio was adamant that the Niners screwed up the trade. They could have got Trey Lance at 12. That is not correct. They could have got Mac Jones at 12. That has been proven. Trey Lance, no chance to me he makes it past like 5, because those teams would have traded up to get him. Trey Lance, who was on the Colts board, like he was widely, highly thought about. Mac Jones was not. Mac Jones was the ultimate smokescreen because nobody in the freaking league. I talked to a team that was not in the quarterback mix, and I said, where do you think, if the Niners don't take Mac Jones, not that I believe they would, this was in like April leading up the draft, where do you think he's going to go? He's like, you know what's funny? we were sitting with our feet up, bullshitting after meetings, we had the same fucking conversation because we couldn't find a place. Bill might have been the only guy. Bill ended up taking him. So I think a lot of these people feel they got played to the Rams on Florio. Like, trading for Matt Stafford and getting rid of Jared Goff isn't dysfunction. It's a genius freaking move. Every Niner fan I know wanted Matt Stafford, and rightfully so. What are you talking about? Dysfunction. Now, you could argue, like, is it classy the way Sean McVay's talking shit about McVay? Is that the right thing to do? That's not dysfunction. Honestly, I appreciate the authenticity. If you hate a motherfucker, tell me. Right? What Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson do, I think, is kind of fraudulent. Come out and say it, guys. Russell, what player do you want? Like, do you just hate your teammates? Just say it. But you never will because you're this corporate kind of halo around.
You can't say I hate my teammates if you're going to play for that.
Not hate my teammates.
So that's the right.
But ultimately, he's mad. Like, you want better play. Like, what player do you want? Like, who is the guy you want? Like, Aaron, what is it that you claim it's not Jordan Love? What is it? What's going on? But they will never say it ever. Where it's like, I give Sean McVay some credit. He's at least telling you can't stand the guy. Like, I appreciate authenticity, which is something that is clearly lost.
We all appreciate it, but it's not always in your best interest. Just like it wasn't in Kyle's best interest to be authentic leading up to the draft, right? Like, I think part of what happened with Kyle when he said what he told Tim, he wanted everybody to think it was Mac Jones at that press conference. I think the way his press conference was interpreted was properly interpreted based on what he wanted people to think. Now, the question just became after that point in time, is he lying or is he telling the truth? But it's clear he wanted people to think, at least he has said this, and I think we talked about this after the fact. The thing to interpret from that press conference is he's talking about Mac Jones. The question then is he telling you the truth or is he lying? But that's a separate issue. The idea that is proof of dysfunction, or because here's the other thing Florio is leaving out of this. If we accept his premise that by trading up that they traded up to 3 without knowing who they were going to take, let's just accept the premise for a second. Kyle has, I think, had a pretty good answer for that, which is it allowed us to do our due diligence for a month and a half without having to hide anything, which is a little untrue because then he went on to hide things. So, some of these things knock into other things. But the point is, part of trading up to 3 is so you can do a deep dive on guys, right? You can show up to Trey Lance's pro day. You can have Trey Lance work out with John Beck. You're not quite as worried about. I do think there are some holes in like this whole thing being presented like this was the master plan and it played out exactly how we wanted from the Niners standpoint. But I do think if you knock them for trading up early, you ignore the fact that they probably did get to do some work on players that would have been harder to do if they weren't sitting there at 3.
To me, if you're operating under the premise they did not know, I don't know if dysfunctional would be the right word. I would say that's pretty insane. If you made the trade not having a guy circled, and then like any human, if you have a month or 2 months to close a deal, right, you should do more due diligence. Like, okay, but if you just made the move, like we think we like one of these 3 guys, let's let it rip. Like that, I think we would both be on the same page. If that came out, like they literally had no clue, they were just going to see, that's nuts, right? Even if it ultimately led to Trey Lance, like that's pretty crazy to make a trade of that magnitude. And I think
simply
it's pretty
for the
fair
right to make the pick.
I think it's pretty fair based on what they said, based on talking about the players, based on John Lynch. I don't think that's true. I will acknowledge the possibility of that maybe being true. I don't believe it's true.
So if I say to you, I think they traded up with an order, with a list, maybe feeling like there were a couple guys they would consider in that list, that's acceptable? Even though, but it wasn't, we absolutely know who we're going to take?
If you told me that when they made the trade, they felt comfortable on tape, like they think Trey Lance, they would take him number 3 overall, but we got to get to know the guy, like I would understand that. Or just knowing like no chance, because it's just an economic exercise, like a player with those attributes. To me, you make that trade knowing once you kind of watch him, once people get their hands on him and you have the background information, like this guy is never going to sniff 12. If they had, this is where my pushback on Mac Jones, if they had made that trade for Mac Jones, you understand the market, and that would have been an embarrassing thing. But they didn't. So I have to give them credit. Like Trey Lance, and back to what I said about Denver, and this is where I think Florio's just kind of been proven wrong. Like Trey Lance was the guy all these teams were kind of circling. And for whatever reason, and I don't quite understand it, even though my guy ended up getting him, I think Justin Fields, even if in NFL circles most people had Trey over Justin, I think Justin was a pretty damn good prospect. But clearly, teams were off the scent on that one a little. Off the scent's the wrong word, just off on him. Right? Because those two teams passed him. I think, would you agree that Denver and Carolina would have been interested in Trey Lance and try to take him?
Well, I think that now with hindsight, yes. But I don't think I don't think at all he would have been there at 12. I don't think there's a chance he would have been there.
I don't think he would have made it. I think people would have traded up to like
part of it would have been if you were the Niners, you probably, even if you're sitting there at 12 that day and then he's sitting there at 6, you would have tried to go up to get him in all likelihood. Right? I mean, how far did Chicago come to get Fields?
20-11.
So you're telling me somebody else?
They didn't take him.
My point is, we're only talking about
Minnesota was going to trade for him too.
That's right,
Fields.
Thanks to the Panthers social team for that breaking news. But we're only talking about teams that were that were in the top 12, right? When you're talking about Denver and Carolina, there's other teams that would have been beyond the top 12 that also would have considered moving up.
Yeah.
Hell, Bill.
Because some of the teams in the top 10 have quarterbacks, right?
Bill might have considered
shitty.
It. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
You know what I mean? Like if Trey Lance is sitting there at 11, are the Niners just going to get to sit there and seems unlikely.
It's hard. Like I get like they have tenuous quarterback situations because their quarterbacks are, a little sensitive, but like I have a hard time calling Green Bay and Seattle dysfunctional. Like they just have these unique players that are just kind of being a pain in the ass. Like they've had it pretty good. It's hard for, to consistently win like those two franchises do and just be like, these idiots. And also like Stafford for Goff, like that's just in my world not dysfunctional. Is it a miscalculation? Did they pay him when they shouldn't have? And all this 100%. Did they change their mind? Things change. Because ultimately McVay, if it had happened to Kyle, it would have been a very polarizing thing. But they kept winning, so we don't talk about it. McVay had to give the thumbs up on the huge contract extension for Jared Goff. He had to have. Or been behind it and cool with it. And then he clearly changed course within, it felt like 12 months. It might have been a little longer, that 18 months. Like multiple seasons, they were out on him. They go to the Super Bowl with him, they extend him, and then 2 years later, he can't stand him. If you and I, the way we talk about the Niners, like, that would have been, we would have talked about that nonstop if it would have been the quarterback and Kyle equivalent, right? He okays a huge deal and then he hates him 2 years later. Like that's pretty nuts. But what the one curveball McVay has that Kyle just won't have is like, I didn't draft the guy. We were winning with him and then things changed. Like he wasn't my handpicked guy.
Yeah, it's also just the nature of you kind of get stuck with quarterbacks and you end up in spots you don't want to be when their contracts are up.
They did pay him early though. Remember, like after year 3.
I understand, but to back to your point on dysfunction, I give the Packers, I give the Seahawks a ton of credit for being this good for this long. You are this good for, in the Packers case, with Rodgers. 14 years, right? Whatever it is, you're this good. They've been a Super Bowl contender, Seattle, for a decade. Like if you're going to be good for a decade, it's going to be hard. And I go back to Antonio Brown and the Steelers. What did we say about the Steelers when they got rid of Antonio Brown? The Steelers are dysfunctional, or it's amazing the Steelers made it this long with Antonio Brown? That's what we said. That's right. Like, so I give the Packers credit in many ways. Now, not with this particular situation. We'll see how this resolves itself. But if it resolves itself, they're going to get credit for that. Seattle seems like for the moment it's resolved itself. They get credit for that. It's hard to be on top of the mountain with egos and money and all the attention, all of that comes with it. It is not easy for anybody to stay up at top. So you stay at the top in the NFL, however you're a Super Bowl contender for a decade, you're not dysfunctional.
You know why, Guy?
Why?
Wind blows to the strongest at the top of the mountain.
That's a good line.
Feels like a low Neil line. It's one of those you just remember.